Hi, I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach parenting and family communication as well as bonding and child development all over the world through the lens of the principle self-government. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how to not become your parents. Many people experience this moment where they say, I don't think the way my parents raised me was the best, and I do not want to be my parents. And then guess what happens? They get going in life, and because that was the only example they ever had, they end up becoming their parents. Do you know there are very few people who actually engage in really active parenting training? I think that's because they are spending all their time, money on learning how to run a business, start a business, make millions of dollars. I don't know. It becomes their top priority. What they don't recognize is what happens in that family dynamic and in those relationships actually impacts the success of everything else they do. So instead of spending all of your time learning about some of these other things, let's put some focus here on what is required to make one of those families that your children will not grow up and say, I don't want to be like my parents about, right? I actually did say I'm not doing that like my parents on quite a few things when I was young, but I did recognize the wisdom in some of the things that my parents did. And that was because maturity hit me, right? You know, when you're just a defiant teenager, you don't necessarily recognize everything they're doing and why. But as I started to grow and I had children of my own and then started taking in treatment foster children as well, I recognized a few things that they did and said were actually spot on. But there were a couple of other things that I definitely wanted to modify. The way our family communicated was sometimes amazing and then other times way too emotional. And it was hard to know which way it was going to happen one day or another. And I think that's just because in some ways it was kind of hinging on what happened with dad's day or mom's day that day, you know? And so it was kind of hard. Plus, the children were definitely not making it easy because we were having our own little emotional struggles because of adolescence and stuff like that. So I wanted something different, and I wanted to be really deliberate about it. Lucky for me, I started doing a lot of training on becoming a foster parent and got really into parenting, how the brain works, psychology, a lot of things that I pursued in college, but now I was applying them to something else. And that was really eye-opening for me. So as I started putting together this home environment of what it would look like to be different than my parents, I realized there were key things that everybody could work on so that they didn't fall into the same parenting traps that their parents did. So let's focus on some keys that you can use in order to make sure that you conquer any of those parenting problems that you might have experienced as a child so that you don't have to repeat them. Number one is principles, not manipulations. So many parents get emotional and start manipulating their children. And then all of the parenting interactions have this like anxiety or annoyance behind it. It's like, that frustrates me, that annoys me, I don't like it, that's not, so don't do that, because that's not really a reason to make a change just because somebody else is annoyed. I mean, sure, you should care, but if it's nonstop, how can that be a truth, right? It's not. So instead, focusing on principles. Principles are forever, they're eternal, they're never changing, and they have a very broad application. So if there is a principle such as drop the subject, that a person can drop the subject, that should be able to be applied to any circumstance. If I hear a no answer, I can drop the subject. If I don't get my way when I try to explain myself to somebody, I drop the subject. If somebody cuts me off in traffic and I can't do anything about it, I drop the subject. There's no need to take it personally. So this is a power skill that actually is a principle. Okay, to be able to drop the subject. So focus on principles, not manipulations, which means that you need to focus on trust, not tricks. Okay, so the opposite of trust is actually force. When you find yourself forcing another person to do anything with your parenting, that usually means you're trying to trick them into good behavior. And it's usually an emotional trick that happens, although sometimes some parents will focus on doing a physical trick too. You know, maybe I'm going to spank spank you or, slap you if you don't stop doing whatever it is. So obviously threats, all those kinds of things are not going to be good. So what types of trust should we have then in our children? So when we trust our children, we trust there's goodness in there. We trust that they can learn. And then we acknowledge we are the ones to do that. I've got more keys to talk about here, but before I do, click that subscribe button. There are so many videos on this channel related to teaching self-government to your children and to yourself. You're not going to want to miss them. Subscribe now. If I trust that my child wants to do good, then I'm going to do more teaching and less reacting. So if you can be proactive instead of reactive, you're going to have greater results. Think of the things you don't like that your parents did. They were probably reactive things, power struggle type things, or manipulative things. If you're not going to do that, guess what you need? Skills. You need words that are different. You might even need a whole new vocabulary that relates just to interactions and communications with your family members. In our family, we have skills that we use to solve our problems together and to maintain that respect and that family unity that we want as a Peck family. These children's books each teach one of the 4 basic skills. This one teaches accepting no answers and criticism. This one teaches following instructions. This one teaches disagreeing appropriately. And this one teaches accepting consequences. Those are the 4 basic skills that a person needs to take care of 99% of their behavioral problems. What if you just taught them to your children? That would take care of 99% of their behavioral problems. Now I know you're saying, well, what, accepting consequences? Do I just say, accept a consequence? No, there's a skill set for accepting consequences. So to accept a consequence, you look at the person or the situation, you keep a calm face, voice, and body, you say, okay, or you ask to disagree appropriately about that consequence that you've earned. Then you do the consequence that was earned and you check back and drop the subject. So accepting consequences is vital for a person to learn self-mastery and to take responsibility for themselves, but it is something that needs to be taught. So what if you taught your children the skill sets to all of those 4 basic skills? It would actually be liberating for them and for you. But sometime they may not accept a consequence. They may decide to have a tantrum and not be calm and keep that calm face, voice, and body. What do you do then? What you do then is you do a correction, which means you will need a skill set too. Now, of course, those 4 basic skills aren't just for the children, they're for adults too. I'm sure you know many adults who do not know how to disagree appropriately. That's because they never got taught the skill. They've just been flying by the seat of their pants and using their emotions and reactions and ruining relationships and making people go, I'm never going to do that, and then keep doing it again anyway. So what skills do you need as a parent? There are 5 teaching styles that I utilized as a foster parent as well as a parent raising my own 4 children. Those 5 teaching styles are praising, and there are effective praises versus non-effective praises. Pre-teaching, so preparing the child ahead of time. There's 3 different types of pre-teaching. And then correcting negative behaviors. That's a 7-step process, and it's a calm process. It does not have to be emotional at all. And there's intensive teaching, so that's number 4. When a person is totally out of control, how do we help them get calm without losing our calmness at the same time? There's a skill for that, and I teach that. And then number 5 is parent counseling sessions, talking to our children openly about things that they're working on, issues that they're facing, and helping them make plans for the future. You need to learn how to do those 5 things or similar skills to them. But if you know those 5 skills, then that will make it so that you are pre-planned for any circumstance. In 2009, the BBC asked me to be on a documentary. I mean, it was really a reality TV show. It was called The World's Strictest Parents. You can actually watch that by clicking the link here. When I did that program of The World's Strictest Parents, they tried to psych me out a little bit and say, oh, these children have such bad behaviors and, it could be really hard and stuff, these different things that they do. And I knew I wasn't going to have any problem, because I had a plan already. That's probably what your parents didn't have. They might have had a piece of a plan, like my parents had a piece of a plan, but they didn't have a full plan. So I was able to tell the BBC camera crew and the production staff, I'm not worried. There is no behavior I haven't seen. And even if I haven't seen it, there's nothing I'm not ready for. I have 4 skills I can teach them. 5 skills I'll teach them about how I'm going to handle problems. And I also have meetings and other ways to communicate, and I could teach them problem solving as well. My whole system is structured to lead them toward self-government. I'm not going to be controlling them, making choices for them, manipulating them. I'm not going to power struggle with them. And they said, oh, we'll see. No, it's true. I didn't power struggle with them. And when our episode came out, it became the most watched episode they had ever had of The World's Strictest Parents on the BBC. And it was because we were so calm. People were amazed. Calmness can happen. You can be firm and be calm. Don't give up your principles. Your parents might have had principles. They just might not have executed them properly. In order to be a truly self-governed person, you have to have principles, and your practice has to match your principles. For many people, the practice does not match principles, so then they start forcing instead of relying on skills that they should have in place. If you don't want to be your parents, get the skills that you need. I'd like to help you with that. I have a free class that I have put here on this channel for everyone who comes, and it is called The Not So Known Secret for Parenting Success. It talks about self-government and the skills and does some training on what type of an environment you will want to create in order to not have to get angry or be passive or whatever it was that your parents did that you know was probably not helpful for you. You may not be perfect. None of us will be perfect. But we don't have to repeat the same mistakes that we know did not lead to good things. So, if you don't want to become your parent and repeat those mistakes, then learn some new skills and develop some new understandings of principles and truths instead of manipulations and tricks. So click the link to The Not So Known Secret to Parenting Success now, and I'll see you there.